Okay, I don't know if this is really necessary for this programming assignment. I tried to include everything you would need to know in the assignment document, but to be consistent, I thought I would run through and discuss this programming assignment like I would do if this was an in-person class. So this is your program 8. It is your first programming assignment that deals with object-oriented programming. And what we're going to do in this programming assignment is implement a simple bank account. And of course, since this is object-oriented programming, we're going to do this using classes and then instantiate objects from those classes. We'll have some subclasses, so there will be some inheritance and possibly some overriding of methods from an object's superclass. So this is all going to start with a bank account class. And this base class is going to have general information that it uses, as well as shares with subclasses. So the class is going to be called bank account, and it's going to have 3 attributes. One is a unique identifier for the account, which can be a string. I happen to use strings, but they look like numeric values. You have an account holder name, which is going to be the account holder. I used but didn't check for and enforce last name, comma, first name. And then you're going to have a balance, which is going to be a floating point number that represents the current balance of the account. And when this account is created, that is when the object representing the account is created, there needs to be an initial balance given. So the assumption is somebody'd come in and say, hey, I'd like to open an account, here's $100. So you would need to record the fact that that account is created and currently has $100 in it. A call to create a new instance is going to look like this. So the first argument is going to be the account number. The second argument is going to be the initial balance, that is whatever the person gave you to open the account. And the third argument is going to be the holder of the account's name. There are 2 methods, or actually there's more than 2. There are several methods that you need to implement. The first is deposit. So you give an amount that you would like deposited in that account, or you take money out with the withdrawal method. And then there needs to be one called get balance that you call, that will retrieve from the object the current account balance. And then there's going to be a get underscore account underscore info that's going to return the account number, the holder's name, and the current balance. So that first account I'm calling a simple no frills account. You just put money in the bank, take money out of the bank. There's no interest, no transaction fee, nothing like that. Now, once you have created that class, you're going to subclass it and create a subclass called savings account. Now, a lot of the attributes are going to come from that bank account, but we're going to add one variable and one subclass. So you need to have something called interest rate, which is a fixed interest rate for all the savings accounts. And for example, if that's 2%, I think that's what I used in the example that we'll see here in a moment, you would just pass in a value of 2. And then there's going to be a subclass called add underscore interest that whenever you call it, calculates simple interest, which is basically just take the balance, multiply it by the percentage rate, which of course will be the value you passed in divided by 100 because it's a percentage. And then whatever that ends up being, add that to the account balance. We're going to have another kind of object that represents a checking account. What's going to happen is it is going to have an attribute called transaction fee. And basically what that does is that is a fixed value for each transaction. I think in my example I used a nickel, 5 cents. So anytime you withdraw money from the account, it charges you that fee or that amount. So that's kind of the assignment. Now then, here is some general information to help you out with this, or things that I'm going to require. First off, this has to be executed on the Grace server, and there are a number of reasons for that. But in this case, the primary one is going to be so you can grab my example program that we'll talk about in a moment, and so that I can potentially use your class definition file when I go through and grade the assignment. The other thing is the file that contains your classes must be called banking.py, and then you'll have another file that you can name whatever you want. I use like PGM8.py, but that name doesn't matter like it does for your classes file. We could do some error checking, but I decided that was something that you could easily add, and it wasn't worth really dealing with in this assignment because I'm trying to teach you about object-oriented programming. So you can just assume that whoever is using your object, in this case it'll be you doing test cases, that you're not going to withdraw more money than they have in the account. Now, so that you could better understand what an object-oriented programming looks like, how it should function, and what calculations are being performed, I've included 2 attachments. The first attachment, attachment A, is a small, less than 1 page chunk of code that I used to test my solution. Primarily, I wanted to exercise and make sure that my classes and my objects were working correctly. And then attachment B is an execution of my program to show you what the output is going to look like. Another requirement is your code should be properly commented, which means there should be comments throughout the program. Your main program should have a header, and your class file should have self-contained documentation, very much like we did for a previous programming assignment. As far as what I want you to submit, again, this has to be executed on the Grace server. I still have some people who are trying to do this on their local machine. It typically causes problems for them, especially as we get to more advanced programs. And, you know, like I said, and you need to be able to get the information in my account on occasion, and or in this one, grab program code. When you go through and do your submission, the very first thing I want to see is your program code. That is the code of your main program. And I want that as text, you know, copy and pasted text, or downloaded and included text, so that it's easy to read. And if I need to copy and paste it and play around with it, I can do that. So no screenshots at all. The next thing should be the contents of your banking.py file that contains your classes. Third should be you executing what I'm calling first_program8.py, that I will show you how to get in a moment. So you'll run my main program with your object file or your classes file. And then the fourth thing you should include is test cases on your own. So you need to write a main program. You're more than welcome to grab and as a template use my first_program8.py file, but you need different test cases and you need more test cases than what I have in this simple solution. And you should obviously look at your answers to make sure they make sense. For example, I haven't made the video yet, but on the date manipulation one, somebody would type in their birthday was in 1995, and the program would come back and say they were 128 years old. Well, part of the intention for you using your own birthday is hopefully you knew how old you were, or approximately how old you are, and you would be able to see if that makes sense. So make sure your output makes sense. If you deposit $200 and then deposit $1,000 and your program tells you that your balance is $1 million, you should look at that, think about it, and say, hey, that's wrong. I have some type of logic error in my program that I need to fix. So here is the attachment A, and the second line of this is a path to where this exists in my account. So you would need to use the Unix cp command, which is the copy command, and say cp space this path name to where the file currently exists in my account, space, and then what you would like to name it in your account. You can name it first_PGM8.py to avoid confusion if you would like. But if you want to change it to something else like Wayne's Program 8, that's perfectly fine. So what I have here, a couple things I want to point out. I have the pound bang notation that tells it to be sure to use Python 3. And then from banking import star. So basically what that's saying is from the file named banking.py, import all the classes that are included in that file. So you'll have 3 classes, so instead of having 3 import lines, for one for each class, you can say import star. So then what I do is I create A1 for account 1, and I do some transactions on that, and then I create an A2 and I do some transactions on that second account, and then I create A3, which is a checking account, and I go through and do some transactions on that. So just exercising and attempting to verify that my solution works correctly. So here is my execution. Each of these counts starts with $100. I believe in each of them I then deposit $200. And then looking at A1, I then withdraw 50. And then my current balance, which I display after every step because I'm trying to test this working. And then I call get info, and it says this account number belongs to Bob Holder and has a current balance of $250. So that's what I call no frills account. Now the next account is a savings account, and for some reason no, I was getting ready to say I have it twice. So what happens is here's the second account. I started off, this is an interest drawing account, so I put $100 in it, and then I add $200, then I withdraw 50. So far the transactions are the same. Now the difference is when I call add interest, it's going to take the interest rate I specified, which was 2%, multiply that by 250 and get $5, and then add that to the current balance. So that's what simple interest is. No compounding, just perform that simple calculation. And then I do a get info, and it says this account belongs to Susie Saver and has a current balance of $255. And then finally, my third account that I create is one with a transaction fee. So I put $100 in there. I deposit $200. I'm not going to charge money or charge people a fee to give me money. But when they withdraw money, I am going to charge them. So I go through the process of withdrawing $50, and I have a 5 cent per transaction. So in addition to taking the 50 out that I'm going to give the account holder, I take that nickel transaction fee out. And after that transaction, my current balance is $249.95. And then I print out info on that third account, and it just gives me the info, which, you know, seems reasonable based upon what I did. So, you know, I've already talked once about making sure your output makes sense. The reason I have you run my program with your objects is so that you have this to go back and look at and make sure that you get the same output, or, you know, most importantly, the same current balance, to show that your objects are and classes are working correctly. And then, of course, the next thing, you're supposed to do your own test cases. So that was a real quick run through, pointing out a few things related to your Program 8 programming assignment.